appreciate everyone making time, and you know, if you're if this is too early and you want to go back to bed, we're going to record it, but stay here because you'll be able to ask questions. Today we've got 3 companies, and I can't wait to share what the companies are, who they are, what they're doing, what they're building. But before we get there, we always like to break bread in the morning and really just connect with a little bit more intimate group. So JC and the team, we've broken everything out for, well, really, yeah, the schedule. So in the next 5 to 7 minutes, we'll do a breakout session where you can meet with 2 or 3 other folks, and we'll discuss some of the key questions, kind of the icebreaker questions, and then through the 3 companies will present their product and what they do. Okay.
Cool.
Why don't we get started?
Let's do it.
So Atlanta Startup Convos, for those that are new, 3 companies present their idea and product and progress to the group. And the first company today is Spaceship. The founders are Patrick Wiseman and Tim Dorr, and very excited about this company because they're tackling a large problem, and you know, Patrick and Tim have been in the Atlanta technology community for years. And Tim, particularly Tim, I mean, I remember back in 2009 when he Tim, I guess you had just sold a small orange. Is that right?
Yeah, that was 2010.
2010. And then was a early co-founder with SalesLoft. Patrick's been at SalesLoft in Calmly. So I'm really excited about what they're bringing to fruition. So without further ado, y'all take it away.
All right, let me hit the share screen button and figure out if this works. So if I did this right, you should see our logo. If I did this wrong, you'll see nothing at all.
See your logo, please. So
Sweet. So yeah, Patrick Wiseman, this is Tim Dorr. We're the co-founders of Spaceship. Our sort of mission is to launch your code with one click. So like once upon a time, Tim and I worked together sort of super briefly. I joined SalesLoft, which he co-founded right around the time that they were splitting from a single engineering team off to a bunch of engineering teams. And I was really excited to work with Tim, and we worked really well together for like apparently what turned out to be 5 weeks, because I went back and looked at the emails, and then Tim left for a bit and went and was the CTO at Showcase IDX. So like really over the years, like Tim and I both moved around a bit. He went from SalesLoft to Showcase IDX, was the CTO over there. I went over to Calendly, was the director of engineering, moved on from Calendly and co-founded a consultancy that I had in town called Deft. And then Tim eventually went back to SalesLoft for a while to have sort of like an internal director of infrastructure something role. That was like sort of a dev tools and accelerators group. And then came back and joined me at Deft, and we did some consulting together, and then started basically working on our idea. What was interesting is that we knew for a long time that we wanted to work together, but we hadn't figured out what we wanted to work on together. So like we had been talking since 2017, basically about co-founding a company, but hadn't found the quite right idea. And part of like our analysis paralysis sort of came from this concept, which is the way to succeed in a startup is not to be an expert on startups, but to be an expert on your users and the problem you're solving for them. The corollary that typically goes with this, if you're an engineer, don't start a dev tools company. Most of them fail. There's too much competition. Literally, if you're an expert in anything else, do that because there'll be less competition. And so like we searched long and hard and then found out that like, great, what are we experts at? And it turns out that like we had been doing basically professional engineering work for so long that we had very little other expertise. Tim and I have basically been working delivering software solutions for like collectively 30 years. But we found that we were solving a lot of the same problems at every single company that we went to. And so we started sort of toying around with this idea of like perhaps software delivery pipelines. SalesLoft, when I joined, was doing basically continuous integration or testing on every single change to the application to make sure that everything that gets deployed to production has gone through their automated test suite. We sort of built as an internal tool when I was there, and then Tim rebuilt it into a much more finalized tool when he went back, was this concept of like a review environment. So every single change that you want to make to your application stands up like an actual infrastructure. And what we've found with that was a bunch of things. And really it came down to team collaboration. So every developer can bring up the code changes as they're being developed in their local branch, look at them, play with them, review them, see what they actually look like, see what the actual user experience is. What review environments basically allows to happen is like everyone that's on the product delivery team, your business analysts, your product owners, your designers, your QA people can all do that for real before it gets to production. At SalesLoft, like it was sort of born out of the fact that as we split to multiple delivery teams, we were also adding a QA process, and it was like immediate resource contention for QA, where you'd have, 5 man-months worth of development work waiting for the tests to get done, which is also expensive. So we were sort of playing around with that idea. When I went to Calendly, we more or less set up the exact same process. At SalesLoft, we were shipping like tens of times per day. When I left, I can't imagine how much they're shipping now. It's got to be insane. At Calendly, we sort of migrated from doing monthly deploys to deploying 6 to 8 times a day, which was a big leap forward. So when we started talking to customers, a lot of the feedback that we got is they were very excited for this concept of review environments. And we did probably about 6 months of customer discovery. And the thing that basically kept coming back was, oh, that all sounds amazing. What do we do for our production deployments? And we're like, sorry, we don't handle those, which was not the answer they wanted. And so what we realized is that continuous delivery was, for a lot of people, just still outside their reach. And so we really started doubling down on this idea of like, we want to build out a whole product platform around delivery. And so some of the benefits in general of continuous delivery is you get higher quality software. And this is sort of an artifact of the fact, if you can deploy things in isolation, you can test them in isolation, you can have smaller changes to the application that can go through your entire development process. So it also is, in that same way, better for team collaboration. You can get higher fidelity feedback earlier from product owners, from designers, from QA folks. You have a faster time to market. Turns out if you're making your tasks a lot less complex and then get through your delivery process quicker, you can keep the same quality and still get your code out faster. And the biggest thing is, like, often for bug fixes, it results in happier users. So it's like, if you report a bug and it gets fixed an hour later, as a user, you're delighted. If you report a bug and it sits on a triage list for weeks, it's not quite the same experience. So a big part of what we were thinking about early was, do we want to bootstrap, or do we want to raise? And so, like, we were sort of thinking through it in our minds, at least, what the pros and cons are. It's like, if you are bootstrapping, you're kind of the king. You get to make all the decisions. Cash flow might always be like a nagging concern. Progress might be slower, but it's like very sustainable. There's like sort of more time to make more mistakes. You'll likely get to be like the benevolent dictator for life. But one of the big drawbacks in our mind is like, you can typically, if you decide to bootstrap all your companies, you can maybe squeeze in like 2 successes in your career because it just takes longer. And in the early days, it's very hard to focus. So we were debating sort of doing our 9-to-5 at Deft, and then our side hustle with Spaceship. And then we were sort of weighing that against raising. So raising sort of, you know, comes with its own sorts of benefits and concerns. Like, you might not be the king anymore, or at the very least you can be deposed if your company outgrows you. There's less time to make mistakes. Like, if someone's giving you basically a bunch of capital, they're going to expect you to use it, and they're going to expect you to use it to grow. They're going to expect you to use it with some oversight and a lot of forethought. Cash flow is less of a problem. If you have money in the bank, you're not like sweating every single sale. Progress is quick or failure is rapid. So you're less likely to be overrun by competitors, but like, if the idea doesn't have traction, you're going to know very quickly. But a big benefit is that you can squeeze in probably 4 to 6 successes in your career, and that you can actually focus on the problem at hand, which is like the big thing that we wanted, was the ability to like focus all of our attention on Spaceship rather than consulting. And so we raised. We worked with Michael and Sean at Overline. If you don't know them, you should talk to them because they're great.
And
And they're here. We were, you know, pre-product, pre-revenue. We're still pre-product, pre-revenue. But they sort of took a chance on us. And for us, like, focus is the most important thing. It sort of coincided with the market timing for what we're working on is right. Like, there's a reason to do it now. And it's sort of like, everything about delivery used to be like very custom and didn't really have common form factors you could build on top of. And that's becoming increasingly less true. So it's like, as we can build on top of those common form factors, the market size gets infinitely larger. And so we sort of realized that we had, instead of like this small idea that we could tinker with and slowly build over time, we had something that we needed to like build all at once and continue building on. And that sort of like led to our decision to raise. So like, we started, I think January 1, like we started basically working on the product full time at the end of last year. And then we were either going to have to go back to selling some consulting, or we were going to have to fundraise. And we like had the winter break and then came back and was like, I don't want to do any more consulting. I think Tim was the same way.
Yeah, I was sick of it. I like working with you, Patrick. I just was sick of consulting.
How far are y'all away from getting your first customer?
Well, what we are doing right now is basically grooming our list of early customers. We're looking for design partners. So the first language and framework that we're going to support on the platform is Ruby on Rails. And design partners, if you're not familiar with the term, is sort of like early customers that we trust to give us like high fidelity, quick, honest feedback, where it's like, if something sucks, they can just text us, hey, that sucks. And then we can fix it immediately. And really iterate with them to make sure that as a delivery platform, we're giving them everything that they need to get the software out the door to the customers. It's like, we really want the process to basically be, the developer pushes code, we run our process, customer gets their feature. And anything that's not in that flow chart is like an edge case that we want to iron out. So
Nice.
If anyone is building a Ruby on Rails application, we would love to hear from you. Our email is founders@spaceship.run. We've got, I think, 60 or so people in our lead gen that we also are grooming at the moment. And then we've got some Atlanta founders that we've talked to as well.
That's great. Well, normally at this point, we give a round of applause, and so we'll do a virtual one. And then let's take a minute of questions before Amanda comes up next. Any questions for Patrick and Tim? And feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. Okay. Well, we've got some time for questions afterwards, and we will make sure
one.
that
there
is.
sec.
Okay.
Yeah, it just took a little bit of second. Yeah.
You'll get a type. You know, it takes a little time to type.
Yeah.
Outside is into particular languages and frameworks. It is not. While we are focusing on Ruby and Rails as our kind of target, and we're building a great seamless experience for that language and framework, the system we're actually building on 2 open source technologies, one of which is Kubernetes. It's a very popular, it's called a container orchestrator. It basically lets you take an application and run it across many, many servers without having to manually go to each server and set it up. And then the other technology we're using is something called build packs. It comes out of companies called Heroku and Pivotal Cloud Foundry, who's out of VMware. And what that does is a build pack lets you go from, I've got some code, I need to turn that into a container that I can run in Kubernetes. It lets you do that in one step with no configuration. So it'll automatically detect what type of code you have and then run the build pack appropriate to that on that code, which will do things like install dependencies, compile code, whatever the needs of that language and framework are. With build packs, it's pluggable. So there's already an existing library of a number of different languages. So everything from the things that are more common in early stage startups like Rails, Node.js, JavaScript, upwards to like .NET and Java and Go and C. Any language you can think of, there's probably a build pack for. So the idea is that we would provide alpha level quality support for all the build packs we can find, basically. But really focus on some specific ones that we know a lot of people in the space. We have a lot of customer potential, and provide like a really high quality, no unexpected things kind of experience for those particular languages and frameworks. So we can basically say anything, but we are going to focus on specific languages and frameworks for now, just as a business decision.
Cool. And then 10 seconds on who do you see as your competitors?
So I mentioned Heroku. They're probably the most obvious ones, but I actually like to say they're not a competitor because they're not selling their tool, they're selling infrastructure. So you got to buy the hosting from them, basically. That's what they sell. We're different. We're not selling the hosting. We're just selling the tool itself. So you pay by happenstance with Heroku, you're actually paying for it with us. And we feel it's a very distinct difference in how we are operating our business, and we're going to scale.
Patrick, Tim, thank you so much for presenting. We're excited to see the evolution of Spaceship.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cheers.
Awesome. So next we have Amanda. Amanda, we met, what, 2, if not 3 years ago? And Amanda, you are working on a completely different product, pivoted it to Staat probably a year ago, if not more. And talk about someone who has persevered, found customers, and is building every day. Really excited to learn more what Staat does and the progress that you've created. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So again, thank you, JC and John, for having me this morning. Really excited to share Staat and take any questions or get any feedback. Again, my name is Amanda Sabreah. I'm the founder of Staat. Staat monitors progress and detects risk in your software development projects. Our team really came together over this idea that the world was changing, and the way that we were building product-based companies would have to change with it. So I like to kind of level set in the fact that we now live in a world of instant gratification. which means that our customers are expecting more and faster. And so you just heard Patrick sort of talk about how a lot of the companies move from monthly deployments to daily deployments, right? So we're moving a lot faster. And in order to keep up with these customer expectations, we have to develop and deploy technology in a way that's more coordinated, faster, and frictionless than ever before. But if you've ever managed a team of multiple engineers or multiple teams of engineers, you understand that it's simply just not that simple. Management is difficult on its own, but if you're quarterbacking an engineering team, it's even more complicated and complex. And it stems from the fact that developers are using a diverse set of tools. As Tim said, there are a ton of dev tools out there, and a lot of teams are using a lot of them at one time, right? And so developers are using a diverse set of tools while managers are using simply a task management system. And oftentimes these tools are not connected to each other. And even if they are, the data isn't designed or correlated in a way that helps them easily keep track of what's really happening from a detailed and a high level. So what this really means, and to say it simply, is there's often a communication gap between developers and engineering managers around project status. A lot of times engineering managers don't have the visibility that they need right off the bat to make the proper decisions. And so they're left to rely on project status updates from head down engineers that may not know exactly the right things to report out. So this escalates into a more expensive and complex issue, like the inability to detect risk in the project early on, faulty sprint planning, and inaccurate resource management. And so as our team started coming together, I have a background in data science, and we have a team, my other co-founders have backgrounds in customer experience strategy and software development and data science as well. And we started asking ourselves, can we use data to correlate? Can you aggregate and correlate data from the developer tools that are being used and the task management system to help managers be more effective and efficient? And the answer is yes, you can. And in fact, it's our mission. And that's exactly what Staat is. Staat is a tool that detects and mitigates risk in software development projects. It monitors progress to deliver the resting pulse rate of your project by aggregating and correlating data from your everyday tools to detect spikes and drops in that pulse rate of the project. And if the app detects a discrepancy, it will send a recommendation to the managers on how to mitigate the risks that arise. It's lightweight, it's human-centered, and we put design at the core. So a lot of our competitors are just data dumping, right? So they're analytical tools that are just dumping a bunch of different analytics from our tools into one spot with no sort of correlation or design to really only present the pertinent information that we need. So our tool really helps our clients prioritize activities, remove bottlenecks, manage resources, and mitigate the anomalies that arise. So, you know, as I said before, software, engineering management, it's hard when you're 1 degree away from the developers that are kind of intimately connected to the work, but you're having to make decisions that affect the project as a whole. And so, we built a tool that pulls data from developer tools and correlates it with data from task management tools to give engineering managers more visibility into what's really happening in the project so that they can prioritize activities, remove bottlenecks really early on, and manage resources. Our team is from Atlanta. We're a fully distributed team, however, now, and we're completely
How many folks on the team right now?
So right now we have 3 folks,
Okay.
and we're looking to bring in about 2 more. So if anybody knows any full stack developers that would like to work on this problem, please send them our way. So yes, please. So we're completely bootstrapped, and we're kind of in the same space as Spaceship, where we started building the product fully in April. And we are now looking for design partners. We have about 12 design partners committed that we will start onboarding at the end of June. And we're looking to scale that number through July and August. So if you are interested in gaining more visibility into your engineering teams or know engineering teams that are using Jira or GitHub and both, please send them our way. You can just go to our website at www.staat.co and sign up.
Awesome. Amanda, thank you so much. Virtual round of applause. Y'all, I think I find it fascinating that engineer-focused businesses have come up with the most brilliant copy and marketing messaging. Design partners. I need a life design partner. I don't know what that means. Is that customer discovery? I mean, I need a design partner for my life. So I'm gonna start going around and telling people I need a design partner. I love that. And Amanda, thank you so much for presenting. We really appreciate it. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but your message did come across clearly. We do have a couple questions. Grant, what does your ideal customer look like? Smaller companies, larger companies? Want to provide any insight on that?
Yeah, for sure. Right now we're focused on teams between 4 and 15 engineers that are using Jira and GitHub. If they have Slack, that's a plus. And right now, as long as they are developing and shipping code, we can kind of analyze it and make data correlations from there.
Wonderful. And Amanda, in our earlier conversations, I know that this kind of manifested from consulting and doing it manually. Can you talk to us, for 30 seconds about just the genesis of that and how it's now pivoted to kind of SMBs?
Yeah, definitely. So as I said, we're bootstrapped. So we are consulting, and that came from also building our first company. So a lot of experience in product managing, project managing, software development projects, and really seeing how difficult it was once you started to scale beyond 4 engineers to really quarterback the project and make really accurate and effective decisions. And just felt like there could be a tool, a very lightweight tool that lives in my browser, or something I can easily access every morning that would help me understand the changes in my engineering project so that I better know how to communicate with the engineers that I'm working with. And so that's really
Awesome.
where it came from. And we just started building it out and doing customer research from there.
Wonderful. Well, Amanda, thank you so much. And we really appreciate you sharing your story. All right.
Thank you, guys.
The third presenter, Osa of ParrotMob. Osa, thank you for being here this morning. And if we learned one thing from today, I think there was a strong knowledge sharing thanks to Eric Crane, a previous Atlanta Startup Convo presenter. The Cult of the Party Parrot, for those that have come in late. It's basically any parrot GIF that you could, or meme that you could think of. So it's already in the thread. We got there at the beginning, but Osa, thanks again, and take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Awesome, can everyone see my screen just to make sure? And slides work? Awesome.
Yep.
Well, good morning to everyone. Thanks again for having me. I'm really excited to share what I've been working on over the last year and really kind of learn from the community. I think this is a really interesting conversation about how we're thinking about starting these companies at the early stages. ParrotMob is a company I founded last year that really is focused on reinventing B2C communication. A bit about myself before I kind of dive in. Before starting ParrotMob, I led engineering teams at MailChimp as well as BlackRock. Primarily think of myself as an engineer with an eye for design, right? So I really focus on building things for people because that's where I derive a lot of my enjoyment. So digging into the problem, with regards to ParrotMob, one thing that I saw while leading teams at MailChimp was that email sort of was dying, right? Not necessarily for across the broader spectrum for businesses that are mature, but for new businesses, especially in the e-commerce space, email presents several challenges. The most important sort of thing I call out here is that we found during my early research that about 85% of all emails just never get opened, right? And that's intuitive given like the Gmail spam filters and just the way we operate as consumers. We tend to filter out the noise and we kind of just focus on the work we have to do with our email. And for e-commerce businesses, though, this kind of presents a huge challenge given that email is one of the primary mechanisms that they assume that they will grow, right? But over time, that proves to be not true. And so these businesses, at least in talking to them, increasingly are turning to expensive ads on Facebook, on Google, just to at least reach customers they've reached already. And so for me, this kind of called out a kind of a huge challenge. The way I'll sort of kind of wrap this up is kind of talking through what this means at a high level for these businesses. First is that their open rates are continuously decreasing. And more importantly, the click-through rates when they actually do get someone to open that email is somewhat abysmal, right? 2%. And so the marketing spend on email kind of presents a huge challenge for these businesses that, as I talked to them, they were trying to, really grapple with and find a solution for. And so as I talked to these folks, while sort of ideating and doing that early customer research, a lot of these sellers that I was talking to actually led me to the right solution, right? For them, they had been thinking about SMS as sort of a way to get at this problem, right? And one retailer, I talked to her and she was like, well, I text my family all the time and, my customers are young people, so I know they're texting. How do I get in their inbox, in their text inbox, that is? And so that really kind of led me on this path of thinking through SMS and understanding its relationship to email in today's world. And what I found was that there was already sort of a wave of direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands who were already kind of leading the charge. They were building solutions for themselves, kind of hacking things together. And there was this kind of, energy within the e-commerce space to kind of think through email as sort of being a phased out solution, SMS being sort of the new, way to kind of reach customers. And it sort of makes intuitive sense. Like digging through the numbers, turns out emails don't get open that much. However, SMS messages get open quite a bit, 95%, on average. And the click-through rates, again, they are super strong, and sales sort of follow from that, given that people are actually clicking through to these offers that these sellers are sending out. However, the truth, though, when I dug into this was that SMS marketing actually, excuse my language, sucks, right? It's really, really difficult to get started. You have to understand Twilio and build out your own infrastructure to really understand how to integrate SMS with your business. And for merchants, this meant that they needed a developer to just get started. And if they didn't have a developer, there were all these platforms that they would have to copy CSVs into and bounce Excel spreadsheets back and forth. And so we found that this was kind of a challenge. And as we looked at the landscape of other providers, we found that a lot of other folks were not really focused on the user experience. They were really focused on kind of getting someone signed up for a year-long contract, and then you kind of have them for a while. And we found that sort of expensive, lengthy sales process, while it served the incumbents, for us was really painful when sort of talking to customers about why that wasn't a good fit. So, well, that of course begs the question, what's our solution, right? So meet ParrotMob. It's the fast, easy, and affordable way to actually start texting your customers, right? So we have a strong emphasis not just on design as sort of an abstract concept, but really as a way to reduce pain for customers, right? So think of the e-commerce seller, and I always remind people that this is usually a person who has 1 to 5 employees. They do design, they build the product, they sometimes manufacture the product by hand. They don't have the time to waste on learning new software or figuring out what your CRM does. They need things to be simple and they just need to go. And so that's sort of how we think about ParrotMob. The sort of difference that we kind of call out when talking to sellers are that A, it's very simple to use. And so you can get started in 5 minutes and essentially be an SMS marketer, which I think really resonates with folks. The second thing that we also call to customers is that it works with your existing marketing efforts, right? We're not trying to replace your ads or replace your email. We just want to add another channel, and then over time, we think you can slowly phase out the other things that are not working. And the last thing I'll call out here is that we are really interested in being able to support the small enterprises, right? The folks who are just starting out in their bedrooms, building their first kind of e-commerce business, to the folks who are a bit larger. So think of Allbirds, Kylie Cosmetics, like sort of the bigger brands that are already established. We think that there's a path for us to support them, but we think being able to support small businesses is also incredibly important. Last kind of thing I'll call out here is that when we started, thinking about this, it was pretty clear to us that a subscription model was what made sense, for, a SaaS business that really is focused on, small businesses. We thought that being able to charge customers based on a monthly cost would make sense. And that's been, validated as we've kind of gone out and found the first few customers. In terms of how we've grown, we again, are very, scrappy and initially bootstrapped the thing and got our first paying customer. And we've sent out lots of text messages since we launched in March. We've raised a bit of funding, like through angels, in San Francisco, who are just folks in my network. But we're definitely sort of, really, really careful not to take on too much capital too quickly, because we think that being able to kind of control the narrative and really focus on the product is super important. That's really all I've got, in terms of ParrotMob. Open to questions, and thanks for letting me share with y'all what I'm working on.
So thank you. Thank you very much for your time. We've got a couple questions. Virtual applause. Dan asked, is there a Zapier integration?
There is not yet. I've gotten that a few times. We are optimized for like integrating with e-commerce platforms at the moment. So we haven't really thought about opening the platform to folks who are not, e-commerce sellers yet. And the question from Bidu.
Great. Bidu.
Yes.
Go ahead, Osad.
Are we planning to support RCS?
Are you planning to support
RCS messaging?
Not yet. RCS is still pretty early, so the carriers have not sort of like gotten their act together on like the platform and the protocols. So once that shapes up in the next few years, we think that's going to be a really big opportunity for us. And then question from David Cho, what is your customer mix, SMB versus enterprise? Right now, we're definitely in the SMB market. We plan to stay there for, quite some time. We think enterprise can be a bit of a lift. And, in my experience working at MailChimp, like SMBs are folks that I think are really important and you can grow a huge business serving them. And then Richard Bakari, are you leveraging Twilio? Yes, we're leveraging Twilio under the hood, and we have some internal tools to distribute traffic, some simple load balancing to kind of make sure that we don't overwhelm Twilio's system. And then last question is, what is the regulatory landscape? Okay, so regulations in SMS are pretty similar to email. The regulation that covers SMS is called the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And essentially it says, what you think it says, is just people have to opt in. And if they don't opt in, you cannot text them. The only difference with, opt in for SMS is that the fines are quite large. So it's about $500 for each violation. So it's similar to opt in for email. It's just, you get really, really slapped on the hand if you kind of violate those rules. And the last question, are you able to integrate with HubSpot? No, not today. We do not integrate with HubSpot.
Osa, can you talk a little bit about the design of the text message? It's one thing when you get a text message that is from Verizon that has 15 different numbers and says your data plan is X, Y, and Z, but it's another when you get one with a beautiful image that takes you straight to an article. How are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, good question. So for us, we really think that the trick to making SMS the next big marketing channel is making sure that it's actually beautiful and a pleasant experience for the consumer, right? So one thing we emphasize to people on our platform is it costs you a little bit more to include an image and to have a message that is readable by a human being, but you should do it. And if you don't do it, we think you're going to see a detrimental effect to your brand over time. So the reason why Verizon, et cetera, will send you an ugly text message that's unreadable is because they're saving fractions of a cent, right? But we definitely tell sellers it's okay to pay that cost, because then people read your message as a human being or as a brand that actually has a personality than, just a computer blurbing out like some random text.
Right. And so you launched in March, is that correct?
Correct.
The product?
Correct.
Nice. And 200,000 messages sent. That's some good authentic demand.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch. One of our sellers had a big Good Friday sale, and they kind of just like really drove a lot of revenue for themselves. So it's really fun to watch that process.
Beautiful. Are there any more questions for Osa or any of the presenters? We're coming up on the 9 o'clock hour, and this was our first Atlanta Startup Convos fully on Zoom, and so we plan to do more, and always trying to improve, and so feel free to provide any feedback on ways to improve. And normally we would do a present or kind of a long form interview, but we know Zoom fatigue is very real, and so we just decided to keep it with 3 presenters and go from there. So if there's not any more questions, I'd like to thank all of y'all for being here this morning. We have recorded this, and we can share this on Meetup and some of the other ways. But Atlanta Ventures, we've got upcoming healthcare meetup, and I believe, JC, the date of that is, it's coming up. We also just launched a podcast. Check out atlstory.com. ATL Story, we are interviewing builders, creators, entrepreneurs all across Atlanta. We most recently had, we actually launching next week with Asif Ramji of Paymetric. He sold that to Vantiv, which then got purchased by WorldPay, which then merged with FIS. And before that, we've had Theron Johnson, political consultant, to Garrett Langley, the CEO of Flock Safety, to Derek of Big Dave's Cheesesteaks downtown. If you haven't had one of those, get on it. It's amazing. And then, and these are 30, 40-minute conversations of just understanding the decisions people have made to get to where they are. So check out atlstory.com, and you'll see the list of podcast episodes that we've done. And y'all, I'm just ready to get together in person. I know we're still battling COVID-19, but all I got to say is we miss y'all and really want to get through this. So we'll look forward to seeing everyone wearing masks in the Tech Village here soon.